Fun Ideas Productions presents the Fun Ideas Podcast.
Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and welcome to Fun Ideas Podcast number 18. I don't really have any updates for Fun Ideas Productions at this time, so I'll just go right into it. Today's guest is Ted Davenport, and he's a collector of old-time radio shows. He's not your typical fan, or my typical guest, but he collects old-time radios so that he can make it available for the masses. He has run his Radio Memories company for over 50 years, where he offers old-time shows of the highest quality available on CD-Rom, cassette, or digital download. Here he is, Ted Davenport. Okay, so on the line I have Ted Davenport, and he's known for his website called Radio Memories. So I guess tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in old-time radio.
Well, I'd always been interested in radio ever since I can remember. And when I was in high school, I had a speech class, and they told us to do a radio play. And I was brought up on television. You know, as soon as television came in, my dad got a set and the radio went off. So I don't ever remember being exposed to it. So we did this radio play. You know, he brought in some clips of some other shows to show us what we needed to do. And here was all these people that I grew up with on television that weren't on anymore. You know, there was Jack Benny, Red Skelton, Lone Ranger, you know, all this stuff was there. Mm-hmm. And I just got extremely interested in it, and I started digging around to where I could find some. And that's how it all started. I was a teenager.
Now, did you actually uncover shows initially, or how did you gain access? Was it record albums or cassettes, or how did you initially gain access to different shows?
I started back in the late 60s, so there was cassettes were there, but that just wasn't the best recording you could get was on those old reel-to-reel machines.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I got. Now, I did uncover things. I would go to radio stations around the city and ask if I could go through the stuff they wanted to throw away. And I would carry the stuff home by the truck full. And it'd just be anything, you know. A lot of them weren't mainstream. Might be stuff like Here's the Veterans or, you know, public service stuff they had. And then when everybody in town knew what I was interested in, they would call me when they were ready to throw something out. And I'd come get it. You know, I remember one station called me, said they were going to get rid of their 78 record collection. Did I want it? Well, yeah. Picked up, I don't know, 400 or 500 of them. So, you know, back in those days, they just wanted to get rid of them.
Wow. Now, where are you located?
Arkansas,
okay. Is that where you predominantly have gotten shows over the years, or did you expand once you learned, hey, they're throwing away all this stuff?
I was basically here is where my job was and family was and everything else, so I didn't go looking all over the country, but what you did was you got in touch with other people around the country that were interested in doing this. And when they would find something, they would send you a copy of it, and you did the same for them. So that's how it grew.
Okay. Because so it's basically initially just kind of trading. Was there any sort of like conventions back then? Because
no.
Okay.
I remember the first convention I got invited to. It was Friends of Old Time Radio, their very first convention. It was in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and it was like half a day. And I just couldn't see traveling that far for half a day. So I didn't go. And then I got invited when Spurtback first was formed. I was invited to join that, and I did. And it was just basically, this was not mainstream, you got to remember. It was just a few people around the country that enjoyed this did it. And it wasn't well known at all. You just had to, if you wanted to start doing this, you had to know somebody, or you didn't get started.
Right. Well, I don't even know if it
was.
Go ahead.
My deal was that if somebody wanted to get started and didn't have anything, I say, okay, I will tape you. You bring me the blank tape, and I'll tape you what you want. And to get you started, and I'll point you in the right direction on, where to go for trading. And because there was a magazine. It wasn't really a magazine. It was more like a flyer they put out. It was called the National Radio Trader. And all it was classified ads for people that were willing to trade. So I'd point them in that direction. But the only thing I insisted on was that, okay, I got you started, and I didn't want any, this was free of charge, just to get you started. Now I want you to do the same thing for somebody else that's interested. And that's the way things got started. I mean, you're talking about 50 years ago. This was, there was no internet, there was no computers, there was no smartphones, it was just you and your enjoyment of what you wanted to listen to at home. That was it.
Now, were you kind of shocked to discover that other people had a similar interest to you back then or even now?
Well, back then, I was surprised to find out that many people wanted to trade and to build up a collection. I thought I was the only one. And then they started popping up. Now, my gosh, they got it so easy now because we had to build things one show at a time. You built your collection one show at a time or one reel at a time, whatever. Now you can get on the internet and there's just thousands and thousands of them. All you got to do is point and click.
Right.
There's no work to it. It's just there. Now, to find the stuff in really nice sound and close to source, that's a different story.
Right. Well, it sounds like the ones at least you initially got were source, correct? They weren't just taped off the air, so yeah, they're probably pretty nice.
Pretty much everything in my collection is third generation or better.
Now, in acquiring this type of stuff, nowadays it seems like everything is litigious. Did you ever get into any copyright issues or anything like that with the shows you acquired or traded or anything like that?
Yeah, I was too small potatoes.
Okay.
It wasn't worth their while to sue me.
Okay.
I did get a thing from this one company, ASCAP or something, there where I was selling this one show that had this one song on it, and they wanted to be paid for it. It was like 8 cents every time I sold them. And after 6 months, I sent them a check for I think $1.25. And they told me this is really not worth it. Don't worry about it.
Oh, wow.
I told like 3 copies, maybe 10 copies of the thing.
Wow.
So that was it.
That's actually a pretty funny story. Now, when you're, excuse me, I'm getting all choked up too. In the early days, which I guess early days we're considering 50 years ago, was there certain shows that you wanted access to more than others that were just totally elusive forever? I mean, you're saying everything's available now on the internet, but were there just shows they were like your holy grail that you just wanted to get a hold of at least one episode and could not, for the life of you, find
No, there's still that kind of stuff. I mean, you're talking about there's thousands of shows available, but not even 10% of what was broadcast. So, it's just, there was all kinds of things. Shows that we didn't have any of. The big ones was the missing episodes of I Love a Mystery. Because, like one of them, the best one I thought was Temple of the Vampires. And there's a bunch of those episodes in that storyline that are missing. I would have loved to have got hold of those. I've been looking for them for the last 45 years. They still haven't surfaced, so probably never will.
Oh, that's too bad. Now, I think I've found you're friends with Martin Grams, who is a previous podcast guest, and has he been helpful in helping you track down certain shows and things like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, Martin and done a lot of things together. I don't want to get into what we're involved in, but we work together a lot. He's been an excellent source.
And for those ones you're looking for, the I Love a Mystery, I know he has the ability to somehow do this to get scripts. Are you interested in things like that, or just the actual finished radio show itself?
I had to specialize a long time ago, or else I would have been building up scripts and premiums and everything else. So I just said, no, I'm going for the shows themselves. That's it. Because I don't have the room for all that stuff. And, the room is not that big an issue as it once was when they were on reels and you had them, had the physical thing there. Now you put them on hard drives and you stack them up, and you can have thousands of shows that take up virtually no space at all.
So are you still acquiring shows to this day?
Oh, yeah. Every day something new comes in.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
yeah, every day. And I've got probably, I got a partner between me and him. There's actually about three of us here. And we have access to everything. I've got access to everything they have. They have access to everything I have. So I probably have access to over 350,000 shows.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, but something new comes in all the time. All the time.
So is your ultimate goal, or if there's a goal, just to try to get as many shows as possible? Probably not get every show ever made because, probably certain ones don't exist. Yeah.
My goal is to get as much as possible in broadcast quality sound. I don't mess with bad sound anymore. It's just not worth it. I mean, why listen to something where you have to strain to hear what they're saying when there's so much stuff out there that came right off the disc? The sound is high fidelity, so I don't mess with bad sound anymore.
Right.
Unless that's the only episode there is, and I'm trying to fill up the series, then that's another story then.
Over the years, what as far as sound quality issues, what series or series plural have you seen the most dramatic upgrades in your collection?
Oh, all of them.
Oh, really?
It is so much better today than it was when I got started. Mainly because, you trade with somebody and you don't know what generation they got. What it used to be, you find a series you really like. Then you start doing some detective work. This guy got it from this guy, that guy got it from this guy, and you track back as far as you can go and try to get it from the earliest source to get the best sound. Because as you know, with tape, generation loss. And we don't have that problem now with digital. There is no, I mean, the 50th generation sounds the same as the first.
Right.
Doesn't make any difference. So now the deal is tracking it to the disk and getting it from the disk. And that's what I look for. And I get just as excited over a sound upgrade as I do a brand new show.
Do you still get things on oddball formats like you're saying reel-to-reel and other things at this point?
Yeah, I'm transferring everything, from my old collection on tape. And I used to sell on cassettes, so I got all these master cassettes, and there's over 25,000 of those.
Oh, wow.
So I'm transferring all that to digital.
So is there any timeline, or you just do a little at a time, just every day?
I'm retired, so I do it every day.
Oh, wow.
I doubt I'll even get through before I die.
Wow. Hate to be morbid about it, but wow.
Yeah, there's so much, and I pick out the important ones and do those first.
Mm-hmm.
The ones I enjoy the most, I definitely do those first.
Now, I hate to say this, but are people still paying for these things, or do they just kind of wait around till it's uploaded for free on the internet? That seems to be the way now to do everything for free. People still pay me. Oh, that's good.
And I'll tell you why they pay me. So, for the sound quality, that's why they pay me. Because it's just none of my stuff, none of mine came from MP3 downloads. None of it.
Mm-hmm.
All mine come from my masters. So they know they're not going to get the same thing they get from every other MP3 dealer or the MP3 free sites. They're not going to get that. They're going to get a cut above. So, and there's people that'll pay for that.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there anything preventing somebody? It sounds kind of cheap to do, but they buy your copy, your pristine copy, and then they just upload it for free, and then that's kind of cutting into your sales at that point.
Happens all the time. There's nothing I can do.
Oh well.
So, not unless I want to copyright this stuff, and who got the money for all that?
Right.
It's more legal stuff, and plus, what would I do if somebody did that? How am I going to sue somebody that didn't make a profit on it?
Right. Right.
Not much you can do. I would just hope that people would, if they paid for something, that they would kind of keep it to themselves.
Right. Right.
Why give away something you had to pay for?
Yeah.
So,
good point. Yeah, I was just kind of curious about that because
use it for trades to get something else that's good. I just think that people should be striving for a cut above what's free.
Mm-hmm. And
that's people. You find people, they don't care as long as they can halfway understand it. That's fine. And that's good, whatever you want.
Now, do you make personal appearances these days, like at Martin Graham's Mid-Atlantic Convention and things like that, selling your shows that way? Okay.
Yes, I've been there for the last 2 years. In fact, I had a table there last year.
Mm-hmm.
Did better than I expected to do, but still not enough to make expenses. But you go wave the flag. They know I'm here. If they see me, and people, if somebody's going to buy something from you, they want to see you in person. They don't want a phone call. They want to kind of see the guy they're sending their money to.
Right. And I guess by listening and collecting all this stuff for all these years, you've gotten a basic knowledge of the history of a lot of these shows, I would think, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You get it by accident, but you get it.
So in that case, do you ever do any like even at Martin's show? Do you give any public speeches or anything like that about the history of a particular show or anything like that?
No, I haven't done that. I've done a lot of talks around locally.
Okay.
Like different civic clubs will invite me to speak after their lunches or something, and I'll do that. But that's just general knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I never picked one series and did a vast amount of research on it.
Okay. Because I know Martin does that. You know, we were talking with him, and you know, he puts out these giant tomes of like Duffy's Tavern and Suspense, and you know, they're all 1,000 pages. But you know, he says, you know, I want to have all the details I can. So you know, which is great. But
I know when I'm looking for information, he's the guy I call.
Have you helped him? I assume so, yes. You know, in finding something when he's working on a book, like he just cannot find it anywhere, and you just happen to have it. Is that correct?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. He's got an open-end invitation, anything you need. He doesn't ask for much anymore. He used to years ago when he was kind of getting started. And, but, you know, he's whatever he wants, he's got.
Mm-hmm. And have you ever used all the shows you have in your collection in any like other capacity? Have you like hosted like your own radio show or anything like that, and just said, you know, kind of introducing, you know, clips or even full shows from your collection or anything like that? Just curious.
Yeah, I had a radio show. It's been years ago, but it was on a station, and I ran it under Public Affairs, and that way you didn't have to worry about the copyrights. And that went on for a couple of years, and then the station sold. You know, I did it for free. I didn't get paid for it. And so the station was sold, and they wrote me a letter and said that we do know that you have a following for your show, but it just doesn't fit in our format. And I was thinking, you know, that's the only time I ever got fired from a job I didn't get paid for. But that's the way it goes.
Wow.
I've done that, and I've donated thousands of hours to the Schools for the Blind.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And you think about it, these things are perfect for somebody who's blind because they don't need their eyes.
Right. Well, of course, you probably know the Gassman brothers, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Real well.
Yeah.
Sure do.
And, you know, I was just down, I only could make it one day. I was just down to the most recent spurt back, and that's when I bumped into Martin Grams again and the Gassmans, and I even talked to them on their show last night. You know, so I'm doing a lot of talking right now, so, you know, after all these interviews, I'm getting a little hoarse, but, where was I going with all that? I was just, you said, you know, donations for the blind and everything like that. So, I don't know if I have a question about that, but that's a very good, generous thing of doing. I guess, is there much call for that type of stuff? Because, you know, you don't think about it when you're a sighted person. Oh, yes, you know, it's like, this would be the perfect format for somebody who couldn't see. So, is there a lot of demand from you for that, you know, to put together compilations or selling or trading in that regard?
Ooh, no, there hadn't been in years. I haven't done it in quite some time, but I don't know if their formats changed or whatever. Anyway, the guy that used to call me about it, he just quit calling. So, I don't know. I also always wanted to, I thought that'd be great to go into nursing homes and stuff, but I don't know. I guess people would rather watch TV.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting and refreshing. I mean, Martin is, you know, about 10 years younger than me, and, you know, I got the radio bug because, but not as much as him, just because my dad always talked about, oh yeah, when I was a kid, there was, radio shows, not TV shows. And I go, really? Yeah. And I think the only show that was brand new in the 70s that I can remember and I might have the title wrong, the CBS Mystery Theater. Yeah. And I used to listen to that. And then whatever, if they occasionally said, here's a radio show of Jack Benny or Fibber McGee and Molly, and they just play something randomly on the radio, but nothing consistent.
I'm putting, in fact, talking about CBS Mystery Theater, I'm putting together every broadcast of that. There's 1,399 of them.
Wow, I didn't even know that. I mean, I just listened to it, and I thought I listened to it for quite a while. It was on for at least 2 years, right? Something like that?
Oh, yeah. I was on from, I think it was 74 to 81.
Oh, okay. I probably was listening from like 77 to 81, something like that, because I know when it ended, and I was kind of disappointed. I said, the only radio show that's brand new. Because I never kind of completely understood why radio had to completely die out. I could see, why they couldn't continue it as it was. I mean, it's kind of like television now. Television is kind of going the way of radio in that, everything's going streaming and everything else, but,
There's nothing on, but and the reason radio went is because the advertisers wouldn't advertise. They wouldn't support a program like they did before. All the money was going into television. Mm-hmm. And without money, there's not going to be any radio.
Wow.
It's all profit-driven.
Well, how did that CBS Mystery Theater get on the air then in 74? Was that just a fluke thing, or do you know the history behind that?
Well, I can give you my thoughts on it.
That's fine.
I don't know exactly, but
okay.
Hyman Brown is the one that did it. And he was also the director and producer of Inner Sanctum. So he was, he'd been in radio forever. And this was a period of time when it had a big nostalgia craze. It was everything that was past was hot back then.
Yeah.
At that time. So that's when he brought that in, and he sold CBS on it, and they gave it a whirl, and it was so popular that after that, they did a show called General Mills Adventure Theater. It was on about the same time, and it aired on Saturday and Sundays, mainly for children. Mm-hmm. And then you had Zero Hour came in there, and there was a bunch of, I call it, revival radio series that came in there. And also Sears Radio Theater come in there and it's, there's a bunch of, I've got every episode of everything that came out that was those revival series. And they're fun to listen to. They're good. Mm-hmm. I enjoy them.
Now, when this revival came on, how did you gain access? Were you just taping them off the air, or did you actually get the...
Yeah, tape them off the air.
Okay. And
they came out terrific because you're using those reel-to-reels, and you just get a much better recording from those. I hated to see them not continue with those. And, they went to cassette. Now, if they had put all that research and money into those reel-to-reels, they would have been one fantastic recording equipment, but they didn't.
Yeah, I have to say I am probably the cassette generation myself. I mean, I've had a few reel-to-reels over the years, and even had a player, but my initial exposure to anything tape was a cassette tape, so I didn't even do 8-track tapes, so...
Well, that's when I was, when Radio Memories was going strong. At one time, I was grossing $100,000 a year doing this, and plus I had my regular job.
Wow! So
I didn't have time to spit good. It was, just, just churn them out. And then when, I guess it was the radio researchers came in with, all the free downloads, well, they just, that destroyed all that.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I make a little bit. It's enough to, I supplement my Social Security check with it. So
that's good.
Yeah.
There was a while there where there was a few different, I can't think of the company names, but there's a few different companies that were marketing old radio shows, kind of through the mainstream and everything like that.
Oh, yeah.
Did they ever work with you, or did they ask you for copies of your shows so they could do that? Or
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I've done that before with, used to be a company called Adventures in Cassettes.
Yeah.
I worked with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I've supplied shows to some of those companies. I also did some work for the Biography Channel and A&E.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing, some of their documentaries, and they're looking for a sound clip or something, they'll call me. And the interesting thing was ABC News called me once, and they were looking for some show in Korea, some news from Korea. And I said, well, yeah, I got that. I've got tons of news. And I said, why don't you just go up to your archives and get it? Don't you have all this stuff? I mean, you're the network that put it out. And he said, well, we had a vice president that had everything destroyed before 1970. Stupid.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I've heard horror stories of that over the years with television, film, videotape, everything.
Yeah.
Things dropped at the bottom of the Hudson Bay, or was things like that, or just wiped and erased over because it wasn't considered useful anymore. Did you ever go into collecting any other things like television shows as well? I know I have a friend named Stu Shostak who started a Showcase Video based on kinescopes and stuff like that. So he did the same thing for TV as you're doing for radio. So anything with TV or just radio?
Well, I've collected the stuff I enjoy, but not to the extent of what I do it with radio. No.
Mm-hmm.
I'll buy a DVD or whatever when it's something that I want to see, but that's it.
Okay.
I mean, no, there's not enough time.
Yeah.
I don't get. I bet I hadn't turned the TV on last month.
I still have a fondness for television, but I'm kind of at this point, kind of like with you with radio. I watch old shows on DVD. I don't actually pay attention to the new stuff anymore. I don't want to consider myself an old fuddy-duddy, but I'm kind of getting that way.
Well, I found this site on the internet that this guy's got all these old TV shows posted up there. There's The Millionaire and General Electric Theater and Studio One and, all those old 1950s TV shows. And I'll watch one of those occasionally. I like those.
Mm-hmm.
But what's on TV now, I'm not going to watch Dancing with the Stars or some crap. There's nothing on. There's really nothing on. There's 8 million channels and you can't find anything I want to watch.
Right. Have you, I'm trying to think of different shows. There's the Steve Darnell's Those Were the Days, I believe is what it's called, and they published the Nostalgia Digest. Have you participated or helped them out on any of their projects or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not much of a writer.
Okay.
As far as writing articles or anything like that. I did write out something years ago on how to tape on reel-to-reels, because there's no manual for that. Technique.
Mm-hmm.
There's no manual for that. It tells you how to do it, but that's it. Nothing tells you, where do you set your output on? Where do you do this? How do you record quarter track mono without inducing crosstalk? Things like that.
Oh wow, yeah. Never really thought about that, but like I said, I didn't really get into that format, so
Yeah. Well, that's all there was for years. So got pretty. And then as soon as I learned all that stuff, then they come in with digital, and I got to relearn everything all over again. Too much for this old man sometimes.
Now, do you, I'll just ask, do you prefer the old formats, or do you actually like the digital?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
There's no right or wrong.
I've got a lot of nostalgia for the old reels. I love them, and but the sound quality on digital just outweighs everything, because you don't have any generation loss. You don't have to do all that detective work that you did before. You find somebody that put it out in good sound, you go with that. Because it's going to be, it doesn't make any difference what generation it was. It's going to be good. And that wasn't the same case with tape. Because you get some guy that might have a 20th generation copy, a cassette copy of something that was just garbage. One of the best examples is X-1. Years ago, I had a set of all of them, and the sound quality was so bad that you might be able to catch every second or third word. And it was just so hard to listen to. I've got a set now that all of them in broadcast quality.
Wow. Good.
That's the difference. That's the difference.
Yeah, I can see your point totally, that the digital is better. Now, have you had the ability yourself, I don't know how technically savvy, but you said you did a how-to, to improve the sound quality of something that's kind of in a poor shape? Or is it just beyond all hope sometimes if something's too muffled?
Well, when something's too muffled or the sound is bad, then you got to start your detective work and see who they got it from, and start backtracking. And until you find somebody had to record everything from disc somewhere. And you just have to find as close as you can get. Sometimes the discs were just poor. And then there's nothing you can do about it. You can't make something better than it was originally. You just can't.
Yeah, that's true.
It's impossible. I mean, you can make it, you can do some EQ to it and kind of, if it's a little bit bassy, kind of, knock down the bass a little and increase the highs a little bit. But then you're going to induce some hiss in there. And, I mean, there's all kinds of, for everything you do, you sacrifice something. It just depends, Is it something important enough? Now, I don't have all that equipment. They can go in there digitally now and remove little things, little annoying things, but it takes $100,000 worth of equipment and somebody that's got the time to spend maybe 7 or 8 hours on a 30-minute show.
Wow.
And you're not going to do that unless it's something very, very important. Like I know a guy they're redoing the Orson Welles War of the Worlds. And they've been working for months on it. And that's something that's, that's important enough to spend that kind of time on. But not everything is that important, or you run out of time. You only got a certain amount of years.
Right. Now, things in your collection, you said you do upgrades. Do you do like partial upgrades? Like if you have a show where somehow you got the second half of the show in pristine, but you still have the lousy first half. Would you sell things that way for a time, where you have a kind of a muffled first half, or would you just not bother with that?
I would note it.
Yeah.
First half, very good. Second half, excellent, or something like that. I would note it where they know what they're going to get.
Yeah, but I assume you've gotten upgrades like that where it's not the complete show, but it's like half of it or something. Yeah.
Sure, and then maybe down the line the first half come in better.
Right. Okay.
You just, I'll upgrade anything if it's better than what I got.
Do you have anything like sort of a this is probably a loaded question, but like a wish list or anything of things you'd like to upgrade that you just have not found or anything like that? Maybe somebody has it in their basement or something.
A long run of the 15-minute Amos and Andy's. I would love to hear those. I've got some, but I would love to have enough to put a whole storyline together. We got partial storylines. There's a lot more of that out there than there was years ago. Mm-hmm. But there's probably 4 or 5 hours of it out there now. But they did it for so long that I don't even know if the disc survived or not. But that would be great. I would love to hear that. Mm-hmm.
Because I know you can't give up hope, because even like it was like a week ago, this is an animation, but they discovered yet another Oswald the Rabbit cartoon that had been lost. Some Japanese collector happened to have it, and he bought it years and years ago, but he didn't know it was a missing cartoon until there was a book out that's the Oswald Rabbit book that said it was a missing cartoon. And he says, "Oh, I have that." So that's why, if there are things like that, if anybody listening to this might say, "Oh, I have a collection of Amos and Andy." Why they would have it, I don't know, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. So, that's why I'm asking you.
Could have a whole bunch of those discs up in Grandma's attic somewhere. You never know.
Right.
A lot of this, the whole McGee and Molly run was found in an old Johnson's wax warehouse. So, and a lot of it was underwater.
Oh, wow.
So you never know where this stuff's going to come from.
Now, how does that work if it's underwater? I mean, how do you work with that without damaging equipment and things like that, or even the tape itself?
No, they were on disc.
Oh, they were on disc. Okay, so I guess that's a little bit better. I was thinking it was a reel-to-reel, and it's like, how do you deal with those?
Everything was done on disc until I think Crosby bought the first reels from Germany right after World War II. So there was nothing on tape before then, and radio was on its downhill climb when tape came in. So almost everything was done on disc.
Okay. Is that including things, I forgive my ignorance on radio for this, but I mean, were things still done on disc even as late as the late 50s, like when Have Gun Will Travel was made and things like that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got some stuff from the late 50s and early 60s that came from disc.
Okay. So that was just the preferred format then,
Yes.
Okay. Because I wasn't sure, because a lot of music albums were recorded, at least from the 60s. I don't know about prior, recorded on a tape versus a disc. But
yeah.
I guess, would that be because of multi-tracking? Is that would be the reason to do that? Whereas
you're getting into technical stuff that I'm really proficient at. I call other people when I get into that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess my main question, which you could probably answer here, is, it's like, was the use of a disc to record radio shows just out of tradition, or it was a preferred format that worked better?
It was a preferred format because every radio station had turntables. And, back in the 50s, and they would just, they would mail the disc out as to the different radio stations, especially if it was a syndicated show. and they knew how to cue them up. Everything else, I don't really know any further than that. I don't know. They probably made the recording on a tape, and then put that on a disc to send out to the radio stations, I would assume, because everything the stations got were on disc.
I see. Okay.
I think. I don't know. So I could be wrong. I frequently am.
Well, I was kind of thinking more in the lines of not for mass distribution through radio stations. I was thinking more just the initial recording, like if if Jack Benny was on stage recording his show, was he always recording it directly to a disc or directly onto a tape initially?
Well, in the early years, it was to a disc.
Okay.
And if they made a flub, they had to start over.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's if it was going to be in syndication.
Right.
That's not if it was done live.
Mm-hmm.
But Benny had a recording company record all of his shows so he could listen to them and see where he could improve on things.
Mm-hmm.
But, when tape came out, I think what they probably did is recorded the show on tape because they could edit tape. They couldn't edit a disc. And once they had it down the way they wanted to, then they put that on a disc and mailed it out to the stations that had bought it.
Okay, that makes sense because, I was saying, it's like, I guess maybe in the early days they didn't have the ability to, and so they had to put it on disc, but,
And that was really something because if they're putting some on disc and the guy made a flub in the last 30 seconds of the show, they'd start over from the very beginning.
Oh, wow. Never even thought about that.
Yeah.
Now, do any of those exist? I mean, or they probably destroyed the masters or something on that, or the lacquers or whatever the word is, if there was a flub. So there's no flubbed versions of radio shows that you know of.
Oh, yeah. They're all through there. I got tons of them.
Oh, okay. So they did make it out. They didn't not always destroy them, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no. See, okay. The network shows were done live.
Yeah.
In fact, the network would not let you put anything out that had been transcribed unless you announced that this was a transcription or announced it. And the network felt like they were cheating or something. It just wasn't as good. Mm-hmm. However, it was just as good. But anyway. And so they would record it, put it on a disc as it was being aired. So whatever mistake was made went on that disc.
Okay. Now, it's true, I think, that at least in the early days, I don't know about later on, there was East Coast and West Coast versions of most shows. Is that correct?
That's correct. Not all of them, but there were. Yeah. A lot of them had to go. They'd do one broadcast and then go back 2 or 3 hours later and do the exact same thing again for the West Coast. So they could all tune in Jack Benny at 7 o'clock. Instead of, if they only did it once, it would be 7 o'clock on the East Coast, and then Central would be 6, and then 5. And then the West Coast would be hearing at 4 in the afternoon. So they had to do it so all of them would, be broadcast at the same time.
So I assume in your collection you have runs of those, the East Coast versions and West Coast versions then?
Yeah, I do on some of them, yeah. Escape is one where I have East and West Coast.
And how do you tell the difference on those? I mean, does it say it, or do you just figure it out?
Well, it was written on the disc.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I don't have those type of things because I honestly don't know if I've seen that listed whenever I've listened to a show, unless somebody has pointed it out that, oh, this is the East Coast edition of this show, you know.
No, you might hear a little bit of difference, but there's not much. I mean, it's the same script and the same actors.
Okay.
Now, I got this one guy that just loves it, but I just, to me, it's like listening to the same show again. I just finished this one, now I'm listening to it again. But it's important, so I use them. I guess my main goal is to try to pass this on to the next generation in the best sound quality possible. That's when I record them in digital. I record them a cut above CD quality. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I want to, if we're going to archive it, it needs to be archived in the best sound quality possible.
And explain what that means, a cut above. Does that mean like a Blu-ray or something like that? What do you mean, cut above CD quality?
Well, I'd have to get into a bunch of numbers here.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't really understand them. Hold on, I'd have to go and look at that equipment. I don't know. But it's the bit rate and all that kind of stuff. It's better than CD quality. It's archive quality. That's the easiest way to explain it.
Okay.
And I mean, you can't take what I record and put it on a CD. You have to change the sample rate so it's a WAV file, and then put it on the CD.
I see.
But the original, the master, is at the best sound quality possible.
Okay. And those you keep on hard drives, correct? Is that what it is?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, I keep two. I keep the original that I did, plus the WAV file.
Now, would something like that in the initial, native version like that you would have on a hard drive, could that be put on a Blu-ray, or is even that not dynamic enough?
I haven't really looked into.
Oh, okay. Because I know, like, you're familiar probably with the Beatles' White Album. They just recently reissued it, and strangely enough, they put the mono version on the Blu-ray, but they put the rest of it on standard CDs, and it's like, okay, so I had to play it on my Blu-ray player, and it had really good sound dynamics because, it's Blu-ray. So I'm just curious, would you ever go that far as to, start selling some of your shows? Do people care that much about quality? I mean, I know you do for archival reasons, but are any of your customers wanting it that pristine for their own collections?
If they wanted it, I'd do it.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
All right. Just curious. Because I know, just because of collecting, what I do, I collect, I don't really collect old radio shows. I mean, I have a goodly amount, but, I collect comic books and, other things, and just standard records and tapes and stuff like that. Quality is key for a lot of people, to the point where it's like, wow, but they're not necessarily an archivist. They just want it that way for their own personal collection. You're kind of doing it more for archival reasons, but
yes. But it's whatever anybody wants, I'm willing to do. But I don't think I've never had any requests for that.
Okay.
They ever wanted is they want them on a audio CD or in MP3 form. Now, when I do it in MP3, I do it at a very high bit rate where you can't really hear any difference. There is a difference, but I don't think you can audibly hear it.
Yeah. Well, probably, especially not for, like, spoken word things, I bet.
Yeah, that's true. But, I mean, the sound quality is very, very good, even on the MP3s. Mm-hmm. But it all has to start, in my opinion, with that very high-quality digital transfer.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said, I think at the beginning of the show, you have a couple fellows working with you on this. So when your time is over or when you just get tired of doing it, whatever, are they prepared to carry on? So is this set up to just be an ongoing thing, even beyond your ability to work with old radio shows?
Well, yeah, one of them that I work with, he collects discs. He's a disc collector and radio collector. And I've already arranged with him. I said, if something happens to me, you rent a semi and come down here and back up to my front door. And I told him he's the one that's going to end up with them all.
Wow.
And, take them on home and, keep doing it for the next generation.
Wow.
Because we're looking at these things are going to be 100 years old or too much longer.
Yeah. And that's the weird thing. I would hate to see all your work go in vain. It's like you're going for upgrades, storing them, on hard disks, hard drives, and then you're gone and it goes. It's like it's just tossed out. It's like all that work.
I've made arrangements for after my death because I really consider this my life work. I did the other thing for money, but this was my life work. This is my gift to the world, I guess you call it.
Well, very good. It was a very good gift. So I will say, even before you're gone, thank you very much. I don't even know if I've gotten anything from you, but once I found out, wow, collecting for 50 years and you have this website, you probably put a lot of care and attention into it, and you definitely did. Yeah.
Yeah. No, everything is done from my masters. Nothing is done from downloads.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important. I really do.
Yeah.
Because, like I was doing on that CBS Mystery Theater project, one guy said, 77, they all sound horrible. I'm sitting there listening. I said, well, mine broadcast quality. I don't know. You got a bad set somewhere.
Yeah.
So, when you listen to something, you want to be able to listen to it and not have to strain.
Right. Well, I definitely know those shows, used to sound pristine on the radio, so it's like I never bothered to tape them at the time. It never even occurred to me. I was about 10 years old, so it's like, I was just fascinated that there was a new radio show on at that time because, like I said, my dad would talk about the shows, and I knew who Jack Benny was. I even remember when he passed away, and but my dad said, oh yeah, his show ended in the 50s, and it's like, what? But he's still around. Why can't he do new? I didn't understand that TV had taken over. I just thought they could do both.
Yeah. No. I just fell in love with this stuff.
Yeah.
Like I said, that's my gift.
Yeah. And, for me, the other show that, of course, he still kind of does a version of it now, I believe, is, the Dr. Demento show. That was a long-time radio show that I heard back in the early 70s. And
I've never heard that. I've heard about it, but I've never heard one.
Well, there are discs of it. I have some of those, but it's, basically, he, Barry Hansen is Dr. Demento, and he's a record archivist and has written books himself. And basically a longtime collector of novelty songs, and basically would introduce each one, do a little history, and then play the song in its entirety, and then go to the next one. So it was kind of like being a DJ, but instead of just playing the top 40, you're playing, silly songs. So that's what he did, and still does.
I always loved novelty songs.
Yeah.
That should be good.
Yeah, so... Well, if you haven't heard those, I recommend those. Like I said, I have a few of those shows. He used to come out from Westwood One. That was the distributor of his show at the time. But I think now he does a podcast, too, like this. So.
Okay.
But anyway, so I'm very happy that somebody is doing this. You have it established for a new generation. some people who don't collect this stuff or don't understand this stuff, it's like, well, it was done for a reason at one time, and it should be preserved. That's how I feel about it.
Yes, it's history. History, yes.
And is there any last words that you'd like to say, or if you want to plug the website or anything like that?
Sure. Anybody that's interested, go to www.radiomemories.com, and we'll take care of you.
All right.
Promise you that.
And like you said, it's sold in various formats. You still do tapes at this point, or just CDs?
I do. I don't get many requests for them, but
okay.
Yeah, I still got all my old cassette masters. I do cassettes, but main thing is CDs, and I do MP3 CDs too.
Very good. And
if you want them by Dropbox, I can do that too. Any way you want it.
Wow. So you're all high tech here.
Just tell me what you want. I've even got a buyer's group where every month we put out 2 hours of uncirculated material, 2 hours of circulating material, all from disc.
Wow.
Every one of them is first generation. And then usually an hour, a bonus hour of BBC material.
Mm-hmm.
And that costs $25 a month. And I had good success with that. A lot of people like getting them, direct from the disc like that.
Is that like a subscription service in a way?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
got it.
Pay me $25 a month, and every month you get a link to where they are, and you just download them.
Mm-hmm. And you said you appeared at Martin Graham's Mid-Atlantic show. Are you any plans to return there, or to Spurtback, or to any other radio conventions or anything in the coming year?
Well, the only reason I don't go to Spurtback is they don't allow dealers. Oh. I got no way to recoup my travel expenses or anything, and it's a long way.
Right.
So, but I will definitely go to Martin's again next year.
Okay.
Because I can defray a little bit of that anyway.
Yeah. And he was telling me that convention is really grown, so yeah.
Boy, it is something else. He has like 10 stars there every year.
Yeah. So I haven't made it out there yet myself, but I do plan to go at some point. So.
Well, you won't be disappointed, I guarantee you. It is something else.
All right. Well, I think that's about all I was going to cover. I just wanted to know a little bit about what you do, and it's fascinating, all this stuff about your radio archiving that you've been doing for 50 years. That's a long time.
Yep. That's a long time to do anything. That's true.
And I hope you continue on, maybe not for 50 years, but as long as you can, so
okay.
Your work is appreciated, so I want to thank you very much.
Thank you. I enjoyed talking to you.
Okay, and thank you, Ted, for being guest on this podcast today.
Okay.
And I'll let you know. I'll let you know when it airs in a day or two. So, all right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Okay.
Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you again for listening, and thank you again, Ted Davenport, for being my special guest today. Episode number 19 will be coming soon. If you would like to comment and or be a guest on this podcast, please drop me a line at funideas.mark@gmail.com. You can become a Patreon of Fun Ideas Productions, and if everyone listening just contributed $1 a month, that would be a tremendous help. This has been the Fun Ideas Podcast. This is Mark Arnold speaking. This episode is copyright 2019 Fun Ideas Productions. Thank you very much, and have a good night.